All right, welcome everybody to the Brunswick County Board of Education Operations Committee meeting on March 23rd, 2021. I'm going to call the meeting to order. Before we start, I would just like to briefly say to everybody, I know we're about to discuss some contentious issues here today. We may have some differing opinions, but I hope everybody will be professional in their dialogue and their debate as we move forward to make decisions for all of the students and the staff in our school system, as well as the families. Because every decision we make here not only affects over 12,000 students, but it affects all the staff as well. I want everybody to be reminded of other professionals. First off, I would like to personally thank the teachers of Brunswick County Schools and the staff. I'm sure the rest of the board will have their own echoes of this same sentiment. Many other districts have had to fight and beg their staff to come and to work and not block them trying to get back into school face to face. And I don't believe our staff has done that or tried to block or object us in any way. And so I just wanted to personally thank them, and I'll let the rest of the board say whatever they'd like to say about that as well.
Oh, great. We've had a wonderful staff. Our staff showing up every day and taking care of business, and I think we're all happy here to be able to have had the kids here as much as they could, and they've been wonderful.
Thank you, Mr. Benton. Does anybody else have anything they want to say?
I'd like to thank the teachers as well, especially the elementary school teachers. They've really been put to the test with going back so early in the year last year, and we appreciate all the teachers that they really risen to the occasion, in my opinion. Just all of them, and just worked well together and kept the kids safe.
Well, you know, one thing that I sent a tidbit the other day to the board members that maybe everybody doesn't realize, that Brunswick County was one of only 9 in the state that went back as early as possible with elementary schools full-time face-to-face. And we also took the first opportunity for high schools and middle schools to go 2 days face-to-face as was allowed by the governor. So up to this point, we've had as much face-to-face as was possible. So I think we can say that we appreciate everybody's working together as classified and certified staff to make that possible. And I know Dr. Oates was very strict about quarantines and all that in the safety mode that some folks didn't particularly like, but that was the correct way to go about that. So I appreciate everybody's efforts also.
And I'll echo what everybody else has said. Compared to other places, I think we did remarkably well when you look at other places across the state. And not only have our teachers been good, our staff in general, especially the staff that we don't always talk about, like Mr. Lemon said, classified and certified, they do different jobs, but, we've had, or at least in my perspective, there's been so little, we've had so many emails and contacts, but the staff has not been a majority of those. And folks have really done dealt with this and pressed forward. And I can't say enough about how much, at least I appreciate what they've done. Especially our janitorial staff, custodial staff, nutrition, transportation. These folks have not said anything, at least not to me. And they have just done a tremendous job of pressing forward. And I'm much appreciative, and I'm sure the rest of the board is too. Can't say enough about these folks.
Anybody else have anything they want to add? And with that, we're going to move on to Phase 2 redistricting, the final realignment options. Mr. Crapper, are you still with us?
Yes, sir, I'm here.
All right, we're going to turn it over to you, and we appreciate you joining us today and all the work you've done up to this point.
Yes, sir.
Couple of quick comments.
Okay, Mr. Crapper, hold on one second.
This is
Yes,
a culmination of about a 2-year effort. Phase 1 being redistricting for the Town Creek Middle School and also Town Creek Elementary addition. This Phase 2 addresses the rest of the district, and Mr. Cropper will be presenting recommendations that we would ask the board to consider and possibly meet at the end of the month to make decisions so we can get our busing in order for next year. And with that, I'll let Mr. Cropper take over.
All right, Mr. Cropper, you're up.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Eckert, and members of the board, and thank you for the opportunity to present to you here today. As Mr. Eckert said, I am here to present recommendations for the second phase of redistricting. And this is a culmination of work that's been done over the past several months, and if you conclude phase 1, definitely a couple of years. So the objectives of this presentation are to give you an overview of the process, the timeline, so you understand the work that's gone into this, and recap some of the work that we have performed leading up to this recommendation, and then present our recommendations. And these recommendations are coming from us, from Cropper GIS Consulting, after meeting with staff numerous times and also engaging the public and listening and getting input. These are what we are bringing forth to you. Before we get to that, just a little bit about who we are. We are Cropper GIS Consulting. We have remote offices all over the country, and we work on with school districts all over the United States. We're currently working here and also doing some work in New Hanover and also in Cabarrus County, North Carolina, doing redistricting work similar to this. And this is just our expertise. This is the kind of work that we do all over the country. And I am Matthew Cropper, and I've been facilitating this process with the district and leading the charge using our expertise and my expertise as an individual. And honored to be working with you guys on this study. A little bit of background about the study. As Mr. Eckert said, we did finish phase 1 in December of 2019, creating a zone for the new Town Creek Middle School that opened this year, fall of this year. The district is also wanting to look at the remaining part of the county to see if there are any other challenges as it relates to utilization or maybe feeder patterns. And we have seen most of the recommendation that we're bringing forth to you is really driven by aligning some feeder pattern inefficiencies between some of your schools. And so, but there is a part of our recommendation that addresses some of the expected overcrowding for the northern part of your high schools, North Brunswick High School. So I'll get to that in a minute. But our focus has mostly been around feeder pattern alignment, but we have been looking at building utilization as well. We have followed a set of criteria when we evaluate these options, and as we develop options for redistricting, we kind of go back and look at these to see which is the option that best adheres to these criteria. And they are to keep students at a neighborhood school if at all possible, and keep numbers for students within a certain threshold of students that the district has identified here. And then also keep an average bus route between 60 and 75 minutes. And so we have been looking at these, evaluating transportation, and also the numbers of students and buildings as we continue to work through the study of your district. Just a little bit of background on the different stakeholders in this process. And so we, the consultants, were tasked to schedule and facilitate all of the meetings, and we've held several meetings. Every other week we've held meetings with an internal planning group, which I'll talk to you in a second. And so we're facilitating all of that work and putting maps together, statistics, talking with the different stakeholders and coordinating the effort. And ultimately, the consultant is the one recommending this redistricting plan to the superintendent and or school board. So we use a lot of our expertise in doing so and sharing what has and what hasn't worked in studies like these. But we have been working with this internal planning team that consists of key school district administrators, including central office, people from transportation, people from planning, facilities. We've had people, the communications staff have been involved, and then also talking with some board members have popped in and talking with it, and just keeping everybody up to date on what's going on. And basically, this group has been doing the day-to-day evaluation and assessment of maps and statistics. And as we continue, the consultants continue to provide updates based off of our ongoing review. The general public has been informed through the process. We have had a website. The district has posted a website dedicated to redistricting. There are methods on there for people to be able to provide comments through a general feedback form. And then we've also had some public information sessions through the course of the study and solicited feedback through surveys for those particular efforts. So the public has been informed, and they have been active through the whole process and giving us feedback as options start to come out and things start to be shared with the public. The superintendent works with the internal planning team and monitors progress, but the superintendent really stays more hands-off, has stayed more hands-off on this process, which is what we typically recommend. As they do provide updates to the board on progress that's being made through the course of the study. The superintendent has been present at meetings here and there, but they are letting the internal planning team do their work, and also leading up to the consultant's recommendation. And the school board finally is the final stakeholder here, and everything is draft even when we present this plan to you, and nothing is final until the school board approves the plan. So the school board really charged us with this effort and advised staff in the process and gave us sort of the high-level framework for this and approved the high-level framework, and then ultimately the board will be approving this plan or whatever the plan is they determine to approve. So talking through the timeline and looking at this, you could see the process for phase 2 started in September, and working through collecting data and information, and then meeting with this internal planning team starting in October. We've been meeting every other week all the way up through this month. We had a public information session at the very beginning in October to inform the public about how they could participate, how they could provide feedback, and where they could see when updates are being made. In between October and December, we worked with this internal planning team in developing options, and really preparing things to present to the public, trying to bring some options that we felt adhered to our criteria as we start working towards a plan. And so when we got to December, that's where we started sharing some options with the public. 2 baseline options were shared with them at that particular time. And then the public was asked to participate in a survey so that we could get input from them regarding the options, and focusing on their input and only looking at input that drives changes to a map that bring us closer to adhering to our criteria. It wasn't like we were saying, okay, this many people like this map, so let's go with this one. It was more people were giving us input like don't cut Ocean Isle Beach in half and send one to one school versus another school. Those types of comments were things that really helped us make changes and evaluate things with a focus on trying to keep neighborhood concepts together, and also that transportation element. So after the December public information session, we shared those 2 maps, and the committee and the internal planning team was continuing their work. The school district offered an extended public comment session in January just to give another vehicle or avenue for the public to give input and for the board to hear them. We got back together in February of this year, and before we get to that, this kind of shows you some of the maps that we shared in December. We had A and option B. In option A, there were a lot of commonalities, but some of the main differences between the elementary A and B was we were thinking about moving some area of Union into Jessie May Monroe. And then for option A, And then there was also some changes at elementary between Virginia Williamson and Southport. In our options, there were some variations between what to do with Virginia Williamson and Southport. And the middle school options that we presented were the same in both maps. And we also presented some high school maps. And so the high school maps that we presented at the time were A and B were the same to pick up an area that was added to South Brunswick in the first phase for South Brunswick High School. And we had broached the topic on this contingency plan that was referred to at that time as AB1, and that was a map to basically see what measures could we take if there was no construction of no capacity relief available at North Brunswick High School. Is there a viable redistricting solution to give them some capacity relief? And I'll talk about that a little bit more and when we get to our recommendation. So we got back together and had this third public info session because after we had that session in December, we were looking at the maps. We made some adjustments to maps, to our options, based off of input that was provided in further study of the options. And then, so these are kind of just a snapshot of what we were looking at. So when we came back to the public in February, we were looking at option A and C, and they were starting to look closer alike. We started to rule out inefficiencies or things that we liked about that we didn't like, and then adopted things that we thought were good. And one of the things you'll see that's consistent and that was consistent in both of these was an area from Jesse May Monroe to Waccamaw, so that Waccamaw feeds entirely K-8. We did not move ahead with the movement from Union to Jesse May Monroe. So in option A, we kept Union intact, but in the revised C option, we made an adjustment so that Union, we were still looking at sending students from Union to Jesse May Monroe, but we weren't including Ocean Isle Beach. And so it was just a modest variation of option C for option B. So we were looking at these, but you'll notice that in both A and C, we adopted moving an area from Virginia Williamson to Southport. And I'll show you some more detailed maps on this. And that was kind of carried forward as something that we sort of locked in for our consideration. And then the middle school maps were not changed when we came back in February, as well as the high school maps had not changed when we came back in February and getting more feedback from the public. So here we are with our presentation of recommendations to the board, and want to dive into these and kind of give you a little bit of a preview on what we have. Before we get started, we did look at, it's one of the things that we wanted to make a note of in the way we're estimating enrollment is due to the impact of COVID-19, your 2020 enrollment was, your elementary enrollment in particular was lower. It dropped a lot more than what we had anticipated your enrollment to do in studying enrollment through demographic study work. So we didn't want to plan just on 2020 because we think it's abnormally low, and that's going to bounce back some. So we did look at 19, 20, and 20 in fall 2019 and fall of 2020 data when we were looking at these options. And I was leaning heavier on the 19 numbers because that was pre-COVID, and that gives us a better assessment of how full the buildings were before the impact of COVID. But we were looking at both years. So this is the recommendation for elementary schools. And when you look at this, you could see that we did move this area of Jesse May Monroe in our recommendation to Waccamaw K-8. This area right now currently feeds into Jesse May Monroe for K-5, but these kids go to Waccamaw for 6 through 8. Doing this and assigning this area all to Waccamaw provides a pure K-8 feeder for Waccamaw. So kids in the Waccamaw zone will be able to go to Waccamaw for kindergarten all the way through 8th grade. You'll see the recommendation does not move the area from Union to from Union to Jessie May Monroe. We did consider this in prior options, but the recommendation determined that there really wasn't a need to move Union to Jessie May Monroe right now. And if you look at the utilization between the two schools, Union's a little high, Monroe was a little on the low side, but Monroe has a smaller capacity, and in moving students from Union to Monroe, we would potentially be giving Union some more capacity relief, but then potentially creating a little more pressure at Monroe. So we just figured to recommend to leave it alone and see what happens with enrollment there. We think that you're going to be good with not making an adjustment between Union and Monroe. The recommendation does move this area east of Middleton over Boulevard over to Southport Elementary School. And you'll see this line that exists here that we moved over to Southport. This is the same line that exists for your South Brunswick Middle School line. And so this move is primarily the St. James community that would go to Southport Elementary School, but then they would just continue to South Brunswick Middle School. Currently, Virginia Williamson gets split between two middle schools. And so what this does is the result of this is that all of Virginia Williamson will feed into Cedar Grove entirely and not be split like it currently is. And then all of Southport would feed entirely into South Brunswick Middle School. So you'd have a 100% feeder for these schools in the middle school. And then the final part of the recommendation here is there's some undeveloped land north of this region up here. Now this is really driven by what we're doing with high school to try to be as proactive as possible to give North Brunswick capacity relief if future growth were to happen in here. So this is basically an adjustment from Belleville to Bolivia, and then the eastern edge of Town Creek would go to Bolivia, but there's no population in here. There are no homes being built actively right now, but this is an area that has some potential for growth, and it's a proactive measure to kind of to thinking forward and giving some capacity relief if more development comes in here. And you'll see this common shape exists for the middle school and for the high school recommendation as well. So these are some tables and some stats. So you can see here that we have brought some capacity relief to your schools. You have in the recommendation balanced utilization in your schools. A lot of this is also coming in with we're assessing 1920 students with your recommended zones, and this year you made some boundary changes, and so that's where you see that you have high utilization in Belleville. That's because that phase 1 redistricting hadn't come into play until this year. Some things were moved around in order to accomplish phase 1, and you see some utilization gets balanced as a result of that. But we do have a pretty good balance of utilization and no impact on real impact on demographics. You have 71 students are impacted in this recommendation for elementary schools. The middle school recommendation is less impact than elementary school. You could see here that for middle schools, we did clean up a small feeder pattern inefficiency here. There was a small section here that went to Waccamaw for K-5, but then they went to Charlotte Middle for 6 through 8. It was just a little inefficiency, a small number of students that we moved this line to align this to Waccamaw. So all the kids inside this area now go to Waccamaw for K through 8. There was no need for any other adjustments in the southern part of the county for this. The only other adjustment that exists here is that undeveloped land that I was talking about in the elementary recommendation. And this area would feed into South Brunswick Middle School. And this is primarily done to align feeder patterns with what we're recommending for high school. No students impacted in this recommendation in the north here, just undeveloped land currently. and no real impact on your utilization because it's really just more of a feeder pattern alignment. Only 9 students were impacted in this recommendation. So for the high school recommendation, we did pick up that undeveloped area that we were talking about. So that undeveloped land gets picked up. Plus, there's a small community here that was moved to South Brunswick Middle in phase 1. This is also included in South Brunswick High School so that you have a 100% feeder pattern alignment. And so the high school recommendation, the primary recommendation here does not impact many students, it just impacts a small section of students in here that we communicated in phase 1 that would be moving as well to accommodate and accompany the middle school recommendations in phase 1. And then again, finally, the undeveloped land in here was added into the South Brunswick High School, just to give North Brunswick as much capacity relief for the future as possible. And I'm going to talk about North Brunswick here in a minute. But if you look at North Brunswick right now, you can see their enrolled utilization is around 75% in the recommendation, 74% recommendation. There's not really an evident need or an immediate need to give North Brunswick High School some relief right now. But I want to talk about what we're seeing down the pipeline for North Brunswick High School. But before I get to that, just want to solidify our recommendations for elementary and middle school. We were asked to identify any potential needs for in additional recommendations for elementary and middle as it relates to capacity. We've evaluated the forecast and the demographic study work and talking with our demographers. We don't see there any need to add elementary or middle school capacity within the next 10 years for the county. There are some places that are experiencing some capacity constraints and some challenges, but we do see some of that leveling off. And also the district can look at how the building is being used potentially before they start getting into needing extra capital construction for elementaries and middle schools. We do not have any recommended additions or new construction for elementaries or middle schools as part of this work. The high school is a little bit different though, and really the biggest pressure that we see in your county exists in the north, and it's what we're seeing with North Brunswick High School. So if you look at the forecast that was developed in October 2019, that the high school continues to creep up, and we're expecting enrollment to get over 1,500 at the end of this forecast. And a lot of this is because if you look at historically, you can see the 12th grade classes were around 216 to 250, 260, but what's coming in are 320. Bigger class sizes are kind of moving in, and as these bigger class sizes are moving in from middle school and smaller class sizes are moving out, enrollment growth is continuing, and we're expecting enrollment to continue to grow here. So, but we don't think that you don't need to do something with North Brunswick right now as it relates to redistricting, but we do expect this to happen. So in framing a recommendation here, what we recommend is that the district add 300 to 400 seats in North Brunswick High School to avoid this overcrowding that we see that's forthcoming. That is, kids are living here, they're here, and the enrollment is going to continue to increase. But with that said, I know that there are limited resources in the county, as most school districts have limited resources. And if there is no alternative, and if the district cannot add capacity to North Brunswick High School and add some seats like we've referenced, then we feel like there may be the district can look at a redistricting adjustment, move the Mallory Creek subdivision from North to South Brunswick. Now this is really, and it's not ideal from transportation standpoint. Now they have been the most vocal group that have told us some concerns about moving to South Brunswick High School, and most of their concerns are related to transportation and the impact of transportation and where they go now versus going to South Brunswick. And they're not wrong, and that it is going to create a much longer distance and a longer commute for them. The transportation is not ideal, but it may, if there is no other alternative, it may be something that the district needs to exercise to give North Brunswick some breathing room and avoid further overcrowding. And like I said, the forecasts show an increasing enrollment toward an overcrowding situation, but it's not there yet. So the way we frame this recommendation is we're calling it a contingency plan, a contingency recommendation, and that this move, which is right here, you see we've extended the line up to pick up Mallory Creek subdivision here, and this should be exercised if there is no. If the district can't add capacity through capital improvements, and if the district, if North Brunswick High School reaches 1,400, this is something that they should look at, that they should consider implementing. Just to give North Brunswick some further capacity relief, and that we do anticipate South Brunswick can accommodate these students as it relates to capacity, but like I said, it is not ideal as it relates to transportation. So that is the summary. That is all the recommendations that we have, and I would be happy to answer any questions that you have or anything further that we can help answer.
Anybody have any questions for Mr. Cropper? Mr. Cropper, I don't think anybody on the board has any questions right now. I appreciate you working with us. I know I'm pretty sure you've spoken to everybody on this board about the concerns we had, and it seems like the maps that you're showing us now pretty much incorporate most of our ideas and our concerns.
Yes, sir. I'm happy to help anyway. Just let me know.
Anybody else have anything else? All right, thank you, Mr. Cropper. Have a good day.
You too, sir. Thank you.
Goodbye.
So that was the culmination of his effort. As he said, it is a draft recommendation until the board approves it or takes other action with it. We had tentatively scheduled, and the schedule had been run past the board in previous sessions, that the board possibly reconvene on the 30th and make a decision if that's what you all decided.
Yeah, I believe 2 p.m. next Tuesday, the 30th, is when we're going to convene to make our final decision on those maps. So.
Thank you.
Mr. Ecker, have you looked into the expansion north to see if it's feasible?
We are actively pursuing ideas as to what we can do. We are about to commission a master plan to take a look at the campus concerning possible additions and some other items that are other options that are occurring up there.
What are the biggest challenges on that campus as far as expanding?
Well, the limited space. Limited space, if we expand, we can always go vertical, but we need to have parking space available. Parking lots in close proximity to the buildings. Just a number of different factors that we would have to take a look at.
Funding-wise, were we able to get clarification on that new money coming down, the federal money? Were we allowed to use that for improvements or expansions?
But we do, when we're talking about capital improvement plan coming up, we will address funding.
Okay. Anything else? All right, we're going to go to Dr. Rhodes for Reopening Schools Act Plan A options, and I believe we'll have a lengthy board discussion after that. All right.
Giving you the handout for the presentation today, but I really want to take some time and
and go through this presentation so many of our folks that are on the live stream can hear and see exactly what the steps to this particular point took. So with that, the major push of this is Senate Bill 220, which was signed into law March 11th. The meat of this law basically outlines that the LEA, the school districts, must provide in-person instruction to students K-12 for the remainder of the school year, beginning no later than the first instructional day that occurs 21 days following the effective date of this act. Pretty much after it was signed, districts across the state had 21 days in order to get this enacted. Second part of this, local boards of education shall provide in-person instruction under Plan A, which is minimum social distancing, to students enrolled in grades K-5. As you know, we've been operating under 6 feet social distancing under Plan B. The CDC has now changed that to, I think, 3 feet, 3.5 feet. I think it's 3 feet actually in the schools. And the last part of this is local boards of education shall provide in-person instruction under either Plan A or Plan B to all students enrolled in grades 6 through 12. So that's kind of where we are. And one of the things to keep in mind is that we, here in Brunswick County, had our elementary folks in school since October 5th, 5 days a week. So that's why we're not focusing on the elementary grades at this particular time. Okay? So with the next slide, what has the board done? As we've talked earlier, as you've talked earlier, we've been on Plan B since September 27th, again opening K-5 since October 5th, providing the option for remote learning for those who wanted it all year long, and also giving parents and students the opportunity to change their instructional delivery options at semester break. So it was giving them an opportunity to change if it was not particularly working for them at that time. Some of the planning that took place in this, after the bill was passed, after it went into effect as law, we sent a survey to parents just to get an idea of whether or not who wanted to come back face-to-face and who may want it to go to remote. And I have that information coming up here now. So as you can see, with this data, let's take a look at and kind of break down exactly what we're looking at. If you would, just skip to that last row where it says total remote as of February 4th. When we did our counts at February 4th to determine how many students were on remote, we had 2,310 students. Now that number probably has grown since that time because parents have always had the opportunity to move their students from face-to-face to remote learning. But on that particular day, that's how many students we had. Now when we sent the survey out on March 15th, you'll see at the top 100% remote returning 5 days. If you go all the way to the end, we have 104 students as of the March 15th survey who decided, parents decided that they wanted to return to 5 days of remote learning. If you look at the second row, AB students moving to remote, this simply means the current students who are in face-to-face now on the AB day, there are 69 of those students who wish to move from face-to-face to remote learning. And the third row there asks for remote but asks for a bus. We're going to need to confirm, because to me that sounds like they're a little on the fence. You can't ask for remote and also ask for a bus. So there's 45 of those folks who are kind of either just misunderstood the question or kind of just don't know which direction they want to take. And these numbers, as you can see, are broken down by school 612 in each one of those particular categories. Okay. Continue with planning. Again, on February 4th, 2021, we sent a survey to staff to determine their attitudes toward face-to-face learning. Let me just make a note that this data is accurate because it was required to have a BCS email address to complete it. There was only one entry that could be made. As you know, we sent a staff survey and we sent a community or parent survey. And we did learn, and we knew that that particular data was being manipulated. There were multiple entries put into that survey, which required it to be kind of disregarded as inaccurate data to use. But the staff of the survey was one entry per person that participated in the survey, and with the results of that we have today as well. So on February 4th, the question was asked, with our current protocols in place, would you feel safe working in a middle and high schools with 5 days of face-to-face instruction if 6 feet of social distancing is possible? As you can see, 40.4% of the staff surveyed said they would, 59.6% said they would not, out of 564 responses.
So how many surveys were sent? You know?
We sent it to all employees, and 564 are the amount of people who replied to the surveys.
Which is what percent of the total?
So if we have about 1,600 full and part-time.
A third.
Third of them.
So 2/3 of the staff didn't reply.
Essentially.
Yeah.
And then the next question, with our current protocols in place, would you feel safe working in middle and high schools with 5 days face-to-face instruction if 6 feet of social distancing is not possible? And of course, 81.9% of those respondents said they would not feel safe, 18.1% said they would, out of 564 responses. Again on February 4th, if COVID-19 vaccinations were available to you right now, would you feel safe working with 5 days of face-to-face instruction if 6 feet of social distancing was not possible? 41.6% said they would, 58.4% said they would not. Continuing with planning, the vaccination events, as you know, this board sent a resolution to the governor's office urging the school employees be prioritized for the vaccines. We sent a survey to our employees to determine how many had had at least the first dose of the vaccine. We did so in an effort to just gauge, the number of employees that had it, and we also did this in a manner that would not violate any HIPAA, because we did give respondents an opportunity to choose not to answer. So if you had, the question on March 15th was, have you had at least the first shot of the COVID-19 vaccine? 918 responses, 73.6% said they had, 22.7% said they had not, and the rest of those that did not said they chose not to answer. Small amount that chose not to answer that particular question. So, in speaking with our principals, after the Senate bill was signed into law, we just had our last principals meeting last week, and the possibility of the return of face-to-face learning was discussed, and I did inform them that we needed to make sure that we were ready if the board decided to vote to bring everyone back. And they began and are still in the process of getting their furniture back in the classrooms, verifying class lists, and doing the things that principals do to prepare for a change in their population. So given that preparation, some of the things that we need to consider. Some of our 6th and 9th graders have not been inside of school all year. This would be a brand new school, a brand new situation for those 6th and 9th graders, because they're leaving their old school. They left their old schools with the intention of going to new schools this school year. Efficient and effective transportation planning calls for 612 to be on the same plane. We've spoken with Mr. Willis in transportation, the possibility of looking at one grade level being on another plan, the other grade level being on a different plan, and from his expertise and knowledge of transportation, it was going to be very inefficient and difficult at best to make this happen. 73.6% of our staff as of March 15th have had at least the first vaccine dose, and vaccination is considered fully effective 2 weeks after the second dose. So many of our staff are getting their second dose this week. I know I'm scheduled for next Monday. So as of February 4th, 41.6% of 612 staff felt safe working 5 days a week with face-to-face instruction with no social distancing. Since that time, we've continued to make improvements to ensure the safety of our buildings, to include the ionization systems for the buses and the school buildings, which I want to definitely commend the operations department on what they've done to get this completed. Of course, we had the PPE, disinfectant spray, wipes, hand sanitizer, everything that you see not only on the screen, but definitely in the schools where you go and see the partition dividers, table dividers, deep cleaning when necessary, and additional custodians to help with daily cleaning. So the operations department definitely needs to be commended for their job in making sure that our schools were safe and clean for everyone who entered those buildings. So with that said, superintendent's recommendation, March 29th, remote student 612, return on Plan B as an immersion period. This would address those grades 6 and 9th, those 6th and 9th graders who have not been in a building at all this year, to kind of get them acclimated to their new buildings, get them acclimated to the staff, that type of thing. On April 12th, 2021, all 612 students return on Plan B for 5 days a week. That is the recommendation as it pertains to the new law, Senate Bill 220.
Dr. Riss, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
For the immersion period you're describing here, that was only a net of approximately 25 students district-wide, correct?
That would be, if these numbers hold true, that would be correct.
Okay.
Just so we would be clear on the administrative procedure, that if you were to vote to approve the recommendation, one of the things that I would have the conversation with all of the principals and my staff is that students who choose Plan A, who choose to be face-to-face, will be counted absent if they are not in the classroom. Currently, if a student is not in the classroom and they're on Plan A and they log into remote learning, they are given credit for being there or doing their work for the day. If they choose this Plan A, if you vote to do that, that will no longer be the case. It will be as we were, as I tell my staff, we'll be playing by 2019 rules. Cannot virtually log in on the days they're absent. Secondly, one of the things I want to express, not only to everyone that's here, but to also anyone that's listening with our teachers. If a teacher has a full classroom of students, we cannot expect those teachers to focus on remote learning as they do face-to-face students. Asynchronous learning will be a major part of the remote learning process, which it has been from the beginning of remote learning. What does that mean? It doesn't mean that you have a teacher that's on the computer screen with you at 8 o'clock and ends with you at 2:30. It means your assignments can be posted. It means that you can check in with the teacher, those types of things. Those students who are choosing to come back face-to-face would be the ones that, the teacher can have their computer up and the students at home can definitely watch the lesson and keep up that way. But what I am going to make sure that principals understand is that the teachers are teaching the kids that are in front of them, if the board votes to support this. Any questions before we go further?
Now, that's different at the elementary level, correct?
That is different. This is solely 612.
Okay. Elementary's not doing hybrid. Or very few are doing hybrid.
Correct.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Further recommendations. We've all said how much our employees go above and beyond. Last year, I gave teachers $100 during Teacher Appreciation Week to kind of offset their internet usage, because when we were thrown into COVID, they were using their own stuff to get the things done. I think they appreciated it. But because we've gone in an entire year, all of our employees have done, as we've all said, more than is expected of them. I would recommend that the first week in May be designated as Brunswick County Schools Employee Appreciation Week, and propose as a gesture of appreciation for all certified employees a $1,000 appreciation bonus. For classified employees, a $750 bonus. And as we've discussed with former boards and this board, definitely support the teacher supplement increase of $500 to make it an even $1,000 as the former board had planned to do before.
Dr. Oates, would you object to classified employees also getting the $1,000? Do we have the money to give everybody that amount? Because this pandemic has been such that classified employees have been depended on so heavily that I don't think that we should make a difference.
I definitely would not object.
I would support that 100%.
I do not object.
And I know that, Dr. Rhodes, when you and I and Mr. Lemon have, we've toured every school in this district up to this point. The three of us have. And I know we've each, when we were walking those halls, not only thanked our teaching staff, but thanked our classified staff, because I haven't walked in a school or even been in a hallway in a school and not seen door handles, light switches being wiped numerous times. We've all joked about they're going to rub the finish off. Not that we care about that, but they've been working their tails off. And I would absolutely support making that even across the board. I don't want to separate our employees. I think they're all working exceptionally hard within their individual categories that they work in. So I would not like to. I don't want to draw that line in the sand. I'd like to treat it fairly.
I have a second point to make on this. If possible, you know, the previous board increased the supplement by $500 last fall, but the intent was $1,000 that we backed off of in the pandemic scare of not having the money to operate. Can we increase that supplement and add that to this spring's supplement?
Yes, we can.
So
That means-
retroactive,
Yes.
April is the supplement month.
right.
That way they will get it now. So the total would be $1,500 addition rather than $1,000 if they were able to. And that supplement to me is overall more important than the bonus money-wise, because that's recurring money from now on. And of course the bonus is one time, yeah. So.
And Dr. Rhodes and I discussed that the other day, and he sent me the email. It took me a minute to pull it up, but first of all, I support Mr. Lemon's modification to this 100%. And the fact that $500 isn't just a bonus, that is additional income that ends up being thousands of dollars in the end when somebody reaches retirement age.
Retirement and all, yeah.
And, you know, I'm all about the bonus as well, but the $500 supplement increase pays dividends years upon years ahead of, afterwards. So I'm fine with doing that now as well.
Current staff only, though,
It's a
right?
huge difference between a bonus and a supplement increase.
How we paying for it?
That was a good time.
How we paying for it, Jerry?
Thank you. Wait, you asked that question.
That new COVID money, right?
Nope. Actually, if you remember, the question is, how will we be paying for this? So the savings that we have gotten from being held harmless with our ADM allotment is one source. Positions, again, that were funded based on the projected ADM, they were not needed because of the enrollment decrease. So there's a savings there. And of course, with transportation services, not needed due to remote learning. So we have the funds to make sure this is taken care of without dipping in anything that will cause us any problems.
Very good.
Ms. Cahill, can you step up for us?
Yes.
We always yield to your expertise and your permission to spend money usually, so.
Yes.
I trust Dr. Rhodes 100%, but just get your feedback and your, you hold the purse per se, so.
With this calculation, it was going to be 1.6 million. I'd have to go back and adjust, but that should not be a problem. We have that and probably a little bit more in savings, one-time savings, because we were held harmless. So good use of non-recurring funds. Timing of it, Dr. Arch, were you thinking May? Or were you wanting to do all of this in April?
Well, I believe the
I would like to see it
supplement,
as soon as possible, personally. some of these folks.
So let's say the supplement's kind of its own thing. So we want to do the supplement. Mr. Lemon, your modification was to do the supplement now, so it hit in April, right?
Well, no, it was just like whatever your date is when you give spring supplements.
And that is April.
That is April.
Okay.
If I could make a suggestion that we do the bonuses in May,
Yeah.
because when they receive all of that at one time, the tax implication for that month is probably.
Yes,
that's smart.
It's difficult to calculate everything that's going on in your check too, with multiple things hitting at once.
You know, we all know at the end of the day, whatever you earned for the year is what you're taxed on, but still for the withholding period, the larger the check, the more will be withheld.
What is the date that the spring supplement's paid out?
The last day of April.
So could we put this on consent for our April meeting then?
I would have to bring a fund balance appropriation for the teacher supplement, because that is, we've included that in next year's budget. And then, but this, we don't have to do an amendment because the funding is already there.
But
So
for
we
the
just stick it in.
supplement,
For the
you would.
supplement, I would need to bring
so
something.
you can bring that to us at our April meeting, which
Yes.
is the 16th, I believe?
13th.
13th, so yeah, April, yeah. So you can have it for us in April, and then they can still be paid out for the spring supplement on the last day of April.
Yes.
You guys go with that?
Yes.
Okay.
If I might suggest, the bonuses be at the end of the month in May. I know, the question comes up, can we have a separate check the first week of May? What happens is, we've been through this several times, what happens is, the system will look at, okay, $1,000, this is all you made this month, therefore there's not a whole lot withheld. And then when you get your end of the month check, same month, it aggregates the amount of money. You made 5,000 and then you made another 1,000. Oh, we didn't take out enough over here, so we're going to take out more at the end of the month. And that aggravates teachers and staff, and it just keeps it more, when they see all the money at once and it takes out what's going to take out.
So for the bonuses, we can put down consent for our April meeting to be paid out at the end of May.
Yes.
So that'll limit the impact of what they'll see in deductions.
Oh,
Best we can.
their normal check
Okay.
amount will be the same, rather than them getting shorted, your check at 1,200 is not there, it's
We're
11.
just limiting
Yeah.
the best we can do.
Yeah,
You
the
got it.
confusion, it limits the confusion.
Gotcha. Okay.
So we'll move the bonuses to the consent agenda for April meeting. And also at the April meeting, we'll deal with the budget adjustments that we need for the teacher supplement.
So can you recap the supplement, like overall, like what our county's doing?
The supplement, I don't have the schedule, but we do pay based on years of experience. And,
So like for
the-
a first-year teacher, like,
Steve, can you help me do that? No, where is he? The teacher supplement, do you remember what it starts at? And what,
It's
20
currently at 36, and we go to 4,100, I believe. I'll look it up real quick, it's on the
yeah.
internet.
I just think that's important because
Yes.
it's recurring and it's, you
and it's an
know,
increase to what they've
Yeah.
already received.
Well,
Right, we don't want to
and
minimize it.
recruiting for next summer, this is a nice
yes.
change.
So we will have increased by $1,000 this
Math teacher
fiscal
bonus,
year
Alright.
to that supplement schedule.
We're gonna leave it.
And just to add what Mr. Lemon said, I do want to hold true to the intentions of the previous board, even though a majority of this board turned over. I'll yield to Mr. Benton and Mr. Lemon on this, but the previous board's intention was to do that $1,000. We're basically keeping that intention and that promise that they had made, and I appreciate us being able to do that, so.
Thank you.
Thank you, yeah.
Let me just add also, I just want to be clear that everyone understands, because sometimes when you do some things, it becomes something that folks may look for. This is a gesture of appreciation for the service, committed service that's been given during the COVID pandemic.
Right.
This does not mean that in 2022 that BCS Employee Appreciation Week will be handled in the same manner. I just want to make sure we all are clear. And that's the end of that presentation.
That
Need a motion to not
We're
return.
gonna go from $3,100.
You what?
We need to make a motion to return the kids.
Yeah, well, I had a few questions before
Okay.
we make a motion for that. Is Lloyd here from transportation?
Yes, sir.
Yep. Well, I had a couple questions, and I'm sure. Do we just take a recess real quick?
I think
Just Ed? Okay.
I think it was good.
Thank you for joining us today. I believe the other day I asked you a couple questions, and I just want to ask you those again. In regards to the transportation and the planning that goes into that, and the bus stops, as far as getting those right with the efficiency of our transportation, and what the challenges are with that, with the kids coming back, the ones that are leaving to go back to virtual. Can you just describe the challenges in getting those bus routes together?
I think right now we're kind of took the date of the 12th to see where we would be with getting everybody moved off B to A, and we're looking pretty good with being ready for that date for everybody coming back. I think we'll have all the routes done with the kids moving back. I don't think there'll be very many of the transition kids coming back if we did the 1 week before spring break to get them if they needed bus transportation. I think we could probably handle that fairly easily.
So if we return them, you're saying before spring break, like the 29th?
For the few kids that Dr. Oates had suggested that.
It was like 25.
25.
And
that would
25.
we'd be able to get those with no problem. And I think right now we're well on schedule to get everybody ready for the 12th, that Monday.
So what would be your challenge returning everybody on the 29th?
Time. I just don't, I'm not sure that we could have all the routes ready for all the B kids to be moved to A by next week.
Okay, as far as getting the routes.
We've got about half the schools done right now.
Okay.
So it would be for the next 3 days. I'm not sure that we could have it done. It would be, a lot of kids would just have to be at bus stops waiting to be picked up.
Not necessarily their assigned bus stop,
Not
just a bus stop.
necessarily there, yes, sir. I'm just afraid it wouldn't be very, you'd have a lot of unassigned children still. That would, if they were on B, they wouldn't necessarily know the bus stop, because this is going to affect a lot of the A kids too, because those routes, with kids moving on to those routes, they're going to have longer routes. It's going to be, different routes. So it's going to affect our whole transportation department, not just the B kids coming on. So, times are going to change, for everybody. And we're hoping not to have to add any of the 10 buses back that we parked. And with our, time's going to be the big problem with that. We don't want kids to be on the bus for 2 hours. And we should, be able to avoid that with having our capacities back to normal. Because right now with our elementary routes, we're still below 48 kids on most of our buses. We haven't gone to 3 per seat. So with the middle and high going to, our regular, 60, 54, and 44 and 40 kids, other than the 24, we should be able to, accommodate this. But the biggest challenge is it's kind of like you're starting the whole new school year, because it's not just a matter of being able to merge the B kids into the A kids. It affects changes the whole route. So we're really kind of starting over. I wish I could say we'd be ready by Monday to have everything done. I just don't. It would be a lot.
And that would create a safety issue, having people not knowing what stop to be at and being unfamiliar with the area.
It could, yes, sir.
Okay. That's the only question I have. Anybody else?
Covered mine.
I appreciate you taking the time to speak with us.
Thank you.
And I have one other person I had a couple questions for, Ms. White. I know there's been a couple members of the board who have questioned whether or not going back is going to make a difference in the education of our students this year. And I know you and I talked, and I kind of wanted to have that discussion again about every minute in the classroom is worth it. And if you can just kind of outline your thoughts on that, and this is your wheelhouse in your department. So.
Sure, absolutely. Basically when we think about the direct instruction our kids are getting every day, it's at 2/5 with our students in 612 coming in. They're doing the best they can at home. Our teachers are doing the best they can at home, but we know the impact it is face-to-face. We can see the difference in that. I'll just share an example of you in middle school. We use an intervention program called Math 180. That 180 stands for 180 days. We're more like at 80 days if we stay on this schedule, because we are not getting the output from our kids at home that we would get in front of them. So we're, this would afford us the opportunity to get a large amount of time back. And when I talk to you in a little bit, we've tried to do that with some Saturday school and some after school tutoring. And I really feel like with this additional time, we'll be able to close some gaps that might make things for the start of next year a little bit more solid for a lot of our kids.
That's the only question I have.
Any additional steps that you would suggest that we need to consider? Or are we doing everything, I mean, the way we're approaching this?
I think looking at history and what occurred in elementary and where we are now with this, when we're taking a similar process, we want to keep our eye on our kids. Seeing them 5 days a week from a social emotional point of view is also exciting for our teachers, and having those relationships there and making sure that their needs are being met both academically and emotionally as well.
Well, and I know that I had reached out to you about being concerned about academic losses, which you were kind enough to share those with me. The number of classes being failed at the different high schools and middle schools, and it's rather alarming, and so I think it is important, as you said, to be back in school as quickly as possible, face to face, for that active teaching, because teaching is a verb, and the kids need that.
And I think we think about the athletics and stamina and those kinds of things. The kids don't have the stamina right now, and we feel like, at this point, with Dr. Oates' recommendation, is that we can get some of that back so that next year we start back ready to go and to close more gaps, because obviously that's our priority as well, and what we'll focus on when we have the summer school conversation, hopefully next month.
And Dr. Oates, could you, I know April 1st is the date that that's the deadline for folks to choose if they want to come back. So even with all the planning we've done before House Bill 220, the law gives them until April 1st. So we can do all the planning we want to right now, but until April 1st, we won't actually have the black and white numbers.
What we will look to do once after the board votes, we will, because the survey we sent out was just that, a survey to gauge where parents, students want it to be. We will need to then have firm numbers by having the schools contact those parents or open it up so they can let the schools know, yes, I want my child back 5 days a week, or no, I want my child who has been on AB to be remote, so we can have the proper planning for that. So we will be opening that up as soon as hopefully tomorrow.
So it says before, so if we do it this week coming up, once you get a final result of surveys, that's it. It's cut off for the year. They're done.
That's it.
So whether that's the 30th, the 29th, whatever you get the survey back, we're finished with this.
But the survey is not a sign-up. They have until April 1st to
sign
up.
Well, they have to be given the opportunity before April 1st. They don't have until the 1st. They have until the survey's complete. So we only have to offer it one time before the 1st. So if they opt out on the 28th, they opted out. They're done. They don't get to come back on the 1st and say, I want in now. They're finished.
And they also can't say they want out. Is that?
They can always go
They
out.
can always go out.
You're still saying they can
They can
always
always go
The
remote.
law allows them always
Because I
out.
had some people question me about that.
They
They
can't
can always
come
go
back.
remote.
They can always go remote, they just can't come back.
Yeah, the law allows them to come out, leave at any time.
Yeah, okay.
With all that, I mean, I'd like to make a motion to approve Dr. Oates' recommendation here on return after spring break, with everybody coming back and those who need to come back to transition before.
I'll second that.
All right, we'll call a vote. All in favor of approving Dr. Oates' recommendation of returning after spring break?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
I appreciate everybody, your effort in that. It's been, like Steve said earlier, it's been a contentious situation, and appreciate you putting this together.
Yeah, and I think the understanding, beginning April 12th, that it's face-to-face, if you plan to go face-to-face every day, and not skipping school and saying I was online or signing in for 10 minutes, no games. It is what it is.
And our staff should feel better because they'll all be double vaccinated by then. If they went to even the latest possible event we held where the county held, they would have their second dose plus a couple weeks. So they should feel better, and we should see those numbers coming up, and our staff should be well protected.
And what I really appreciate, Dr. Rose and I met probably, 6-8 weeks ago, was the concern of the students coming to school and getting on a Chromebook. And everybody was having to juggle so many different moving parts. And the kids at home were being dialed in, and, you know, the kids in class were trying to be engaged. And I just appreciate the fact that the kids are going to get active teaching now. That's been a concern of mine. And if they do the asynchronous teaching, that will be much better for the kids. Much better for the kids.
All right, next on the agenda, Ms. Rutledge, for a progress update on the air purification installation of the buses and in the schools. And I know up to this point we've released where we're at on it, but if you could just give us an official update to the board here, and then.
Okay. It's complete on the buses, and we have some units still to do at North Brunswick High School, I think. Am I right, Rob?
That's correct. We'll be done probably by Friday.
Be done by
With
Friday.
everything.
North Brunswick House will be done by Friday.
Yes, sir.
And everything else is done except the early college.
And I talked with the early college president about that yesterday, and I'm not sure on that yet, but we're working through it.
And when you say you're not sure that they want to put it in, or if they'll let us put it in?
What? Either. They just, they want to know more about it.
Okay.
And so we're going to give them information, and then I'll get back to you.
So we have not, so the early college, since it's not our buildings, to be clear, that is not our facility.
That's
right. Yeah.
So, okay, so we're negotiating with them on whether we're going to be able to install it there or not. Since it's their building, they have to sign off on it.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and I appreciate you bringing that up. I want to make sure the public knew that the early college building is not our building. That belongs to the community college.
That's right.
I mean, that's considered an improvement that they would make to their building, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We just got to work through some stuff. They had some questions about the technology, how it installs, and we get it to them.
And I just want to personally thank you and your staff and whoever you're pointing at. We can't see them.
Yeah.
Rocky.
This is Rocky Johnson.
I love calling everybody on the hot seat today. I apologize. No, I think I can speak for the board, but I'll say it personally. I appreciate all the work you guys have done in getting this done. I think the most amazing part of this is we're one of the only districts that have done this district-wide. It's this amount of money, but the fact that you guys got over 100 school buses done in a very short amount of time.
That was our bus guys.
Yeah. So that and plus all the school buildings here that we're probably going to be done by Friday. That's amazing to me. I just want to tell you that I appreciate the community appreciates you, and you're helping us do stuff like this, and so our students greatly appreciate it. So I just wanted to tell you that in person.
I would just ask that the three of these gentlemen, Mr. Johnson, Mr. Smith, Mr. Wilson, stand so the folks on live stream can see. These are the folks that keep these buildings and buses operating. Appreciate it.
It was a huge thing, especially when I asked you the other day. I said, "How many buses exactly was that?" It was over 100. You said you did. Yeah. So it's a lot of buses. So we appreciate that and getting our buildings and keeping the buildings as clean as they've been as well. I mean, that's been phenomenal. So we appreciate you guys.
Thank you, guys. Mr. Barger, one more thing on that.
We appreciate you too, Ms. Rose.
Thank you. Sometimes when this is a lot of stuff to purchase and install, and you know, everything we do has got to be done by state statute, and so sometimes we forget the administrative people that have to make all this happen right. Ms. Cahill, Ms. Fike down in our building, that's some work too, just to get all that done so quick. So I didn't want to leave it out. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay. And well, actually, I guess the rest of this is kind of you, isn't it?
Sort of.
Okay.
Let's see, we are, the first item is asking to increase the dollar amount on informal projects. BCS Board Policy 9120D defines the informal construction bidding threshold to be greater than $10,000, less than $500,000. If construction work falls within this range, bids must be secured, results recorded, and the contract awarded to the lowest bidder. I'm not going to read all this. I'm just kind of skip here. We want to increase this to less than $50,000 to match the state statute for the rest of this year and the next fiscal year. The reason being, the construction business is really busy, and they have a lot of work bidding larger jobs. It's hard to get, we do okay if we're bidding larger jobs. We have bidders. It's hard to get people to bid small jobs. They still got to go find sub-labor. And the cost of materials has increased greatly, and so you get over $10,000 quick. And so to try to get bids when somebody's, they're busy and they're really not interested in doing it, it's getting harder and harder. So that is the reason we want to do this for a year and a half so that we can kind of keep things moving. 30, excuse me. Thank you, Craig. 30,000.
That was the next question, yes. You want to move up to 30,000, not higher?
Yeah. Yes, sir. And whatever it is, it matches the state statute.
Yeah, and the state statute says 143, 131 is 30,000.
Okay, yes, 30,000.
We can place that on consent?
Please.
It's marked for consent, yes.
I'm good with that.
Thank you. The next item is West Brunswick Heating Building. This was a planned project. This is a practice heating facility at West Brunswick. We received 10 bids, and we are recommending awarding to the low bidder Stonehenge Building for $326,117 and asking that this be placed on consent.
We're within budget on it? Yep, Ms. Cahill shaking her head.
Yeah, that's good.
Anybody object to this going to consent? Okay.
The next item is HVAC upgrades at South Brunswick Middle School.
Lincoln.
This is
We're Lincoln too. We hopped one.
Hold on.
Lincoln's the roof replacement.
Number 7.
Yeah, thank you. I got it. Roof replacement at Lincoln. This is bond funds.
Yes.
Let's see, 8 bids were received. Recommend we're awarding to the lowest bidder for $709,365 to Highland Roofing. And this, because it's bond money, goes to the county for approval.
REI is going to oversee that project on our behalf?
So looking for action on this one to proceed with moving this to the county.
Say it again.
We're looking for action on this one so we can go ahead and send it over to the county. There's nothing for you to vote on with the contract because it's a county contract.
Yeah, all right, so can I hear a motion to approve?
Sorry.
That's all right.
All right, Mr. Lemon, second.
Second.
Ms. Moffett, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? 0 opposed.
The next one is South Brunswick Middle School HVAC upgrades. We're recommending, this is for upgrades to the 600 wing at South Brunswick Middle. We'll have more work to do there, but right now, the 600 wing. And we're recommending the work go to the lowest bidder of 3 TA Woods and to place this on the consent.
And this is part of that consistency with the HVAC systems that you have been talking about in previous months?
No, this is a replacement of equipment. The other is controls, and
Okay.
this this will get the associated controls, but this is, let's see, eight heat pumps and a new energy recovery unit.
This will work with Schneider though, right?
It
We're
will.
not building anything else that's not there. so-
That's right.
That was my question.
Yeah.
This is gonna work within that consistency project?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, I noticed that wasn't Schneider myself, and I'm like,
Yeah,
whoa.
that's why I didn't ask my question properly.
I'm good,
Okay.
I'm good with that.
Yeah, there's kind of like, there's hardware
Yep.
and software.
Yep.
And Schneider's kind of the software, and this other stuff's kind of hardware,
Got it.
Yeah.
Any objections, this going to consent? All right.
The next is Leland Middle. This is request approve a design build contract with Schneider Engineering to finish out new equipment in the remainder of Leland Middle School. $1.9 million. This is a 400 pod, a 200 pod, 10 rooftop units serving the kitchen, cafeteria, some offices, classroom, music, band, gym, and new controls to make everything the same in the whole school.
Coolest place in Leland.
Yeah. Now, where are these funds coming from, Ms. Cahill?
It's budgeted in, is it bond? I think it's in bond.
Let's see, wait a minute.
I think it's,
But this contract is not quite ready, right? So this one is coming up for action at the board meeting?
That's right.
Action.
All right.
at the board meeting. This one's on consent though. Till then.
I haven't received the packet on
We
this one.
didn't get it in time.
I think
I'm sorry.
these are just to let you know kind of what's coming up, because you don't like to have them, first time seeing them as action items, but they need them approved next meeting
Yeah.
because of.
So what is the action agenda for next month?
Yeah, on April the 12th or 13th.
Yeah. Any objections to action? All right. Town Creek.
Town Creek, we just opened bids for a new roof at Town Creek down there, just while I've been up here. And so this is in here to let you know that if this is a normal bid and we're awarding to the low bidder, we'd like to put that on action in April also. This is for the roof replacement at Town Creek. We also opened bids for Cedar Grove. And I don't know the results of any of those yet.
And if we don't have enough bidders or you're unhappy with that price, we'll just repost, list it again, we'll re-bid it again.
Yeah, but I just, before I make any assumptions, I mean, this schedule is so tight.
Okay.
Yeah, we're going to have to start working on those schools to get this done before school starts back, and to do this in the summer. We're going to have to work over the cafeteria and gym while school's still going on. So these two are going to sort of be tough. But I'll know, it'll either be normal bid and it'll be on April, or we'll do something different.
Okay.
All right.
Another one that's coming that I need you to know about is a change order for additional work at the coast. I do need to slow down here and kind of explain this one. Part of the construction at the coast was to use part of an existing gym as an area for serving meals prepared by students. As construction progressed, staff recommended that additional finishes to the serving space be made to enable that space to be used by a larger variety of users. The additional equipment and finishes will provide an opportunity for students not only to learn about culinary activities, but the associated needs that accompany meeting space and conference space. So the students would learn and experience the requirements of what's done for both of those areas of work, which are closely related. Typical meetings appropriate for the space would include training and professional development, community business meetings, and small committee type meetings. The architectural changes to more fully upfit the space include a drop ceiling. Before we just had it open, the gym ceiling that was there, and the exposed mechanical. Acoustical treatments, meeting space type lighting, small podium and stage area, reconfigurable furnishings, restroom changes to convert the locker room space into more of a meeting space, restrooms, audio visual infrastructure, and with that work there's code-driven changes to sprinkler and HVAC systems. The construction manager on the job is bidding the work, and we will bring a number back to you in April.
That'll still be suitable, those restrooms, for the showering and all that when they use it as a
Yes.
shelter? Okay.
Yes.
Just making sure.
Well, I better make sure. We didn't
Yeah.
make showers out, right?
No,
No, yeah, they're still in there. So that will come back on action. Ionized,
Do you anticipate this will fall within the contingency money plan for the project?
Yes,
Okay.
it will fall within the budget amount.
Okay.
I believe that's it.
That's it.
So did you say that was action for April?
Yes, ma'am.
That's all we have for operations. If anybody doesn't have anything else.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn by Mr. Levin.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. None opposed? And we'll take a 5-minute, we'll reconvene for your meeting, Mr. Benton, at 3:35, is that what it is?
Yep.
All right.
Burn through it. Oh.
Okay.
You want to tell me the bonuses for coming, Jerry?
I just did.
The AstroTurf replacement, this is year 2 of setting aside funding to be for the AstroTurf replacement cycle of 10, I think 10 or 12 years. The next few projects are projects that we have completed with previous bond dollars. And then we moved on to the early college high school because that's in bond issue 3. And we'll be looking in next fiscal year to get 1.5 in advance dollars from the county to start the planning for that building.
Will we be, we'll be looking at that the whole time on how that building's gonna be designed and all of that prior, obviously, to us beginning that planning process on that, right?
Yes, we'll have a dialogue with the principal of the early college high school, yourselves, and we'll get a design team on board. Hopefully, I believe we will recommend construction manager at risk.
Okay,
And,
yeah.
we'll identify a location and we'll do what we do best.
All right.
And so then in 2023, when we received the funding for bond issue 3, there's 22.2 million allocated to that project for a total of 23.7. Then there's another $1 million for advance on other projects within bond issue 3. And that is so that they can get projects started and maybe work through the summer next year. And then the next item, addition to North Brunswick High School, if the board wishes to proceed with an addition there, this is the planning phase of that, and I'll go into how we're going to pay for that in just a minute. So we would need $1 million to start in this next fiscal year. And a rough estimate of what would be needed after that is $9 million, but Sue has already indicated, as has Craig, that there might be a couple of more million needed to that project. We would just adjust that next year.
14, I think, right, that's what we were talking about.
14, is that what you said?
Well, yeah.
So 4 more million, okay. It keeps moving.
Just move it.
Always move north.
Our new CTE building in there too.
So in terms of the funding sources, we are allocated the sales tax revenue that comes every year. Then the funding agreement calls for a certain percentage of the ad valorem to go towards capital. And then down below, the BOE debt service advance, I put that in 2.5 million. And then pretty much where we're short is this, that's the plug right here, the reserve funds that are with the county. So in order to make that work, we would need $658,000 out of the contingency funds over there. And I'll go into more detail on that. But notice in the next year, 7.8 million will be needed from those contingency funds in order to fund this north project. So then if we'll go to the next page, it's kind of a running total of where we, can you blow that up a little bit? Of the two pots. So you know those are our contingency dollars, ad valorem here. Currently, let's see, well, at the end of this fiscal year, we're expected to have 7.5 million in that. And then in using, so next year we're expecting it to grow by 800,000, and then we're going to use 658, grow by this, and then use this. So really, in essence, we've exhausted this ad valorem contingency fund with what we've obligated so far. Now, granted, when we estimate that it's going to grow by 800,000, that's a very conservative amount. It normally grows, well, actually, in 2021, it's estimated to grow at 1.3. So it's just conservative. But by the end of this 5-year cycle, if we leave it the way it is, we will be back into $3 million in the reserves, and that's conservatively speaking. In the sales tax reserve, we have not touched that for a while, and so there's at the end of this year, it's anticipated to be $6 million. So Sue is rapidly rounding up spending that $4 million. This is all we have right there. So.
Got to be done.
So we would next year tap into this source in order to meet whatever the extra was needed for the North project. But then we're pretty tight on those reserve funds for a couple of years, for several years. But to be able to fund an addition and pay as you go for that amount of money is pretty impressive. We normally have to borrow in order to fund these capital projects.
So the new money that's coming down, the 12 million, that allows us, can we repay some of our previous, my understanding was we could repay ourselves for like the air filters or however, whatever any funding, any repairs we've done with that money, if it's COVID related or related to the buildings.
So very strict uniform guidance policies have to be followed. And the reason we didn't use it for the filter money to start with is because we didn't want to take the time for the bidding process to take place.
Okay.
So we could not go retroactively and pay ourselves back if we hadn't followed the process. They've been very clear about these funds will be heavily audited, and you know that bidding process is huge with all this federal money.
How about all these HVAC systems and things of that nature that are obviously needed to?
So preliminarily, we've heard that you can upgrade your HVAC systems. There will be a webinar coming in the next couple of weeks that Molly and I will listen to that talks about how you can spend this money. And then we will submit our plan. And just early talking is that we have talked about putting 6 of the 12 into HVAC projects, which would do 2 schools, I believe.
Yeah.
And that would refund us back that money we had already put out from the bond money, or?
It's to do 2 more schools to further the...
We can't go back and do some of the stuff that's currently in the bond with that and take that money that would have been bond money and leave that as free money for us to use for capital building?
We could, but we've got a lot of projects that need to be done anyway. So...
Nothing to gain.
Well, it's $6 million in the
No, but she said we got, both Sue and Ms. Kayla were saying we got to try and replace those HVAC systems regardless.
Understood.
So we could, if we hadn't started, in theory we could, but I'm not sure we would because they would like to move on other schools. Because there's a double win to that, you get better air quality, but also your efficiency with the utilities will be a long-lasting effect.
Okay.
So early part of that, and I was going to bring that back next month. I'd have more information kind of about that, but half of it at this point would be going to HVAC, and then we've got some technology needs, and we've got some positions that I'll talk about in a little bit. So we're kind of gathering the data. Currently with the CARES Act money, what we're doing is refunding ourselves with the extra custodians as one piece, and we could probably continue that if there was a need to continue with extra custodians next year. So, back to the first page if you don't mind. So this is the CIP, as I said. Craig is going to go into detail on these small projects with the 5.7 million. And that sheet that you have in your booklet as well, but Craig will speak to that. And then I'll come back.
Next page, please. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going.
The big sheet, the detail.
Where is it? Oh, we're here.
Yes.
We made it.
There it goes.
Every year we poll the principals and ask them as to what they feel their needs are. We also talk with Larry, Rocky, and we compile a plan of action for capital expense for the coming year. Of those items that get identified, some of them have already been addressed in the bond. Some of them could have been on a previous capital outlay budget that was approved, and some of them are addressed in other ways. So, next page, please. So, as we roll through here, you'll see this stuff is by school. They have the three columns addressed in the bond, already addressed, or capital outlay budget amount. And we can roll through there. One big item you see, line item number 21, is the connector for the coast. We had some preliminary work done by a civil engineer. 500,000 will cover that if we so desire to proceed with it. That connects BCA up with the BCC, and I know we've been talking about that for a couple of years, but that's funding for that. Canopy, 144,000, Cedar Grove Middle School. The canopy, when it was constructed, just juts out from the main entrance, but there's no real covered space for stacking the vehicles. DOT says 5 cars in, 5 cars out. It's the most efficient way. At this point in time, we cannot do it that way when it's raining out. Other highlighted items, and if you see any items that you have questions about, please ask me. New greenhouse up at North Brunswick High School. We are putting a new greenhouse at South Brunswick High School with some of the bond money. The greenhouse up in North Brunswick is in rough shape. Weather's not been too good to it. And it's just a plastic, whereas we are trying to put acrylic panel in these new greenhouses. The inspections and permitting up in the town of Leland is getting very aggressive. So we will need to provide some design documents and life safety plans so people can know how to get out of the greenhouse if they need to. Usually one door. But Inspections and permitting overall is getting very, very rigorous, and it's taking more and more time, and time is money, stamp drawings, but it's for the safety of all and liability. North Brunswick, to renovate the theater art room, put sound lights in it, it's an item. Canopy at South Brunswick High School, where they exit to the bus lot is a fairly long walk, so we can run through these items.
No, you don't need to do that.
Yeah. If you have any questions or what you see, please ask me. I'll try and give you the best answer, the true answer. I know that we are working on trying to get some repaving of parking lots this summer, north and west, and that's with some money that's coming from the flood monies. So it's a continuous ongoing process to try and keep the facilities in the good shape you see in it.
I see on 74, it's Supply Elementary School, addressed in the bottom, but does that replace that entire roof there? Number 74.
I would have to look and see.
Okay.
I know that is currently out for bid right now. I believe that bid's in the next couple of days, and we do have a fair amount of money for roofing at each of the schools.
We'll see your map, Mr. Robinson, that'll show it where it is. Yeah.
You and I have talked about that before, but this will be a permanent solution to that issue we talked about a month ago. Okay.
With the fading paint on the roof? With the fading paint on the roof?
Yeah, and a couple other spots I think was noted.
Any questions? We would, I'm sure Ms. Cahill would ask for your consideration, review and consideration of this, and if there are any questions, feel free to contact myself or Ms. Cahill.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you.
Thank you. At the bottom of the page are below the line items were over to the right, and if there are any changes, modifications that the board wishes to make, if you could contact Craig or myself. The next step in this process with capital outlay would be to bring a resolution and to formally approve the CIP to be sent over to the county either next month or the following month, and to solidify the projects. So nothing today, this is just informational, but if you have any feedback, if you could provide that between now and the next meeting, that would be great. The next item, we normally do not bring current expense to the March meeting, and we're pretty moving along, and thought we'd give an introduction with the more time to have to be thoughtful in the decisions. We don't have revenue numbers, this is just with the requests and then all of the requests. And then prioritization, and this is just the first look, as I said. The first thing we do is we look at unavoidable costs. We're anticipating, for example, that the retirement rate is going to go up at least a percentage. The hospitalization will go up, and which is these two are givens, they always do. And then we're guesstimating a 2% increase in salaries for staff. And then increase in charter enrollment, that's an every year occurrence. So we just start with that, but that's just in a holding place right now because we're not working with a balanced budget yet. The next group of items are things that have come through that we would like to proceed with now, actually. So when the request came from the student services for those various positions with nurses, EC teachers, some contracted service, social workers, psychiatrists, and the thought was, okay, we're going to have some COVID dollars anyway. Student support, which is really what they're saying we need to spend this money on to try to get kids back on track. So if you look all the way to the right, those first few items, with your permission, we would like to put those requests into that plan that we will be doing April 1st.
Which one's the first four?
Lines 15 through 22. And if you see the COVID dollars for 2 years, Mr. Foster has looked into it that we can hire these positions and put them into their contracts that they are for 2 years.
So temporary positions.
Temporary positions.
So what are you asking we do with that?
So with these items, let me just further down, so those are the positions with COVID, and then social studies lead. There's some changes in curriculum, I think, and they need to move on hiring somebody for that now to be ready for summer. Maintenance of water coolers, they need that now, and we have some non-recurring money available. The athletic supplies, this is at the $95,000.
So do we need to put this on consent for the next meeting?
We could just get approval now, if you don't mind,
Okay.
for just these things that are in red. I mean in green. Line 15 through 27.
We have a motion to approve.
Motion.
I have a motion, Mr. Barber, a second.
I haven't even read all these yet, so, like, I'm trying to figure out their funding source. We're moving to approve before we even...
It says local or COVID.
Yeah, there's only one that's local.
Let's see why.
Current year. Current year. These are non-recurring type things. The athletics is just for this year because of not having the date receipts.
Right.
So these are all just the COVID money?
Yeah, or the local savings.
Well, current year, I mean, it's from 23 to 26 actually, because this current year local for 24 through 26.
To the library, allotment increase.
Yeah.
We have a second. Seconded, David.
Yeah, second, yeah.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
And the next, I'm not going to go into detail, but the next page is, we think if we had to have a balanced budget right now, we could fit in all of these items as well. You just notice the top of the list, teacher supplement increase, which the board is going to move on that right away. And then below the line items are the ones that are currently we don't feel like we've got funding for, and if more money comes in, then we'll revisit some of those. So that's just kind of where we're at today. Next month, we will bring, depending on how far we're in this.
Can I ask a question about the full-time sub situation? I saw somewhere else where it was recommended that one be shared, that something be shared between the early college and the coast. I'm just wondering about these full-time sub situations, like for right now. Some of these tiny schools, whether we should do that or not, like Town Creek Middle.
Yeah, they don't need that.
The chances for the rest of the spring of needing a sub every day, I don't know.
Yeah, the coast same way in the early college.
Versus the staffs with 100 people, chances are you're gonna have more than one per day.
I mean, the elementary schools all have PAs as well.
I'll just throw that out, you guys can think about it.
Dr. Oaks, do you have data on which schools have the highest frequency of staffing challenges? I guess is the way to ask that question.
As far as the highest number of subs?
Yeah, which ones, some schools may have 5 subs that are regular that they can always call on, and some schools may have 1.
I don't have any hard and fast data. I can talk about the number of absences as far as schools are concerned.
Okay.
Historically, one of the highest schools with staff absences has been Leland Middle. Historically. That may have changed this year. But it just, there's no rhyme or reason. We can even break it down to the days, of course. Mondays and Fridays have been the highest days of absences. But that's been the case for 25 years.
I think that's in every industry.
Yeah.
I really like the concept. I know Mr. Benton's talked about it for a while. So anyhow, let's throw it out.
I agree with the concept, but I also agree with your concern, Mr. Lemon, as far as does every school need one or utilize. Some schools could possibly utilize two.
Yeah, I mean, in the fact that elementaries have the ability to use their TAs to cover, where the high schools have no TAs in the building concerns me more because they're pulling planning periods and that can get, especially now that we're bringing the kids back, that's going to be a major concern for covering coverages. I mean, I'd prefer them to be regional, honestly, if we're gonna, you know, if we have 5 schools on the north end, then we have 5 subs.
I would say let's try it the way it's recommended and then see how it goes.
Okay.
It may not be.
This is not an approval today thing anyway, right?
Just information. So next month, we will bring you more detail on this particular, on this.
Okay.
All right, the last item are budget amendments, unless there are more questions. The first one is state number 7, and this is actually, the 30,000 is a refund for the NCVPS, Virtual Public. We did not use that virtual as much this year as we historically do. So we feel like we'll be back on track next year. It's just been an unusual year, so they're truing up what they've already taken away in anticipation of needing that. Twice retained student funding. This comes every year with there's certain students that this money is targeted to provide additional services. The next one, local number 6. This is that $1 million we talked about last month to appropriate the funds to make that payment on the debt service for the energy savings project. The next one is capital number 10. And this is the debt service payment on the replacement buses. So the state provides the funding, and this is just putting that on the books. And gov deals. So there's a $13,000 item there for the sale of surplus equipment. Special revenue fund, Medicaid fee-for-service, which comes most months. And the 10,000 NC lottery, this is for West, where one of the teachers received some kind of an award for the school. Maybe you can...
Yes, he'll be joining us at the board meeting in April to talk all about it, the NC School Heroes Honor.
Okay, so let's put the money on the books. And if we could put the budget amendments on the consent agenda, please.
Consent? No problem.
Thank you very much.
That's everything for the budget meeting. I have a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Motion by Mr. Robinson, second by Mr. Barger. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We adjourn.
Mr. Bennett.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and call our next meeting here for curriculum to order. First thing on the agenda, we're going to hop down to Ms. Lloyd.
She's coming.
Okay. I was asked to rearrange here scheduling.
Already, okay.
So we'll be talking about bullying.
We are. You got one? You've got the clicker, you can do it.
Right, so for those who don't know me, my name is Meredith Lloyd, and I work in the Student Support Services Department. I work with the school counselors, school social workers, and dropout prevention specialists. Before I get started, thank you for arranging the agenda a little differently for me. I apologize for that. But I've been asked to speak on bullying today, so I'm just going to go through what our policy looks like, the procedures that we have in place, and then I do have some data that I was able to pull. So bullying is something that's often used incorrectly. Bullying is different from being mean. It's not that being mean is okay. We certainly don't think that that is true. But bullying is actually defined as unwanted aggressive behavior among school-age children that involves a real or perceived power imbalance. The behavior is repeated or has the potential to be repeated over time. And there are 3 primary categories. We have verbal bullying, social bullying, and physical bullying. Verbal and physical are pretty self-explanatory. Social happens when we have groups that socially isolate another person, or you can't be his friend because I'm your friend, and they start to build barriers just socially between peer groups. We also have to consider cyberbullying. That's definitely something that we face in our world today. So our policy code is 4329-7311. I've copied and pasted it for you. I'm sure you're aware of it, so I won't read it to you, but the big part to look at is the board is committed to providing a safe, inviting, and civil educational environment for all students, employees, and other members of the school community. So we have to consider how we go about doing that. So this policy applies to every adult, every person that comes in our building. Yes, we want our children to be safe and to not bully, but this applies to our volunteers, our employees. Anybody that is in our building has to follow under this policy in terms of creating a safe environment for all. So the policy prohibits bullying and harassing behaviors or the encouragement of such. So if I'm encouraging Tori to go bully somebody else, that falls under this policy. So it's any school building or any school premises before, during, or after school hours. So when we think of our football games or sporting events, that's still considered on our school property. Any bus or other vehicle is part of any school activity. At any bus stop. During any school-sponsored activity or extracurricular activity. At any time or place when the student, employee, or other person is subject to the authority of the school personnel. And lastly, any time or place when the bullying has a direct and immediate effect on maintaining order and discipline in the schools. So definitely, the last year has posed some new educational environments for us. So specifically, number 5 and 6 address our responsibility in the remote learning environments. I may not be physically on our school campus, but I am still, I can impact the order and the discipline of the classroom in which I'm participating virtually. We are still responsible for those kids during the school day. We do have some preventive practices. You've heard a lot about multi-tiered systems of support. So providing supports to students not only with their academics, but also behavior and social emotional learning. Everybody has that core instruction, but we have students that maybe need that higher level support through a tiered system. We do have social emotional curricula available. Most of our elementary schools use something called Sanford Harmony. And through a new grant, we are actually getting ready to start Second Step in our middle schools. We have PBIS. There is some component of PBIS in all 20 of our schools. They are at different degrees of implementation, but PBIS is the Positive Behavior Intervention and Supports. And it's, while we think of it as acknowledgments and rewards, it's really about establishing the behaviors we want in our environment, which is our school campus, the safety that we want to see school-wide, and then acknowledging the behaviors that feed into that, that system. We do have support staff, counselors, behavior specialists, school psychologists, school social workers, our CIS, communities and school success coaches, and our school nurses. Ms. Dixon in her department has the cyber safety plan, which includes the supports provided by the digital learning specialist. We have internet safety lessons that are coordinated through the media coordinators. And then we have the cyber safe instructional practices. And she is here if we have any questions about those. Moving down into the counseling, which is again my area. Counselors provide tiered services. We have the core that we provide to every student, but we also have opportunities for small group and individual counseling that is considered a preventive practice. And then our schools are shifting to restorative practices. So rather than that suspension component is how do we restore the relationships and restore the environment within our buildings, so we use classroom meetings and conferencing. The protective responses. So we know that we have a lot in place. The behaviors still happen. So when that happens, our gaggle monitoring system, which is something we recently started as part of the statewide grant opportunity, that is helping us monitor the statements, the pictures, the communications that are happening electronically. Again, support staff. As part of that tiered system, we are responsive just as much as we are protective. We would like to be, preventive. We would like to be more preventive, but sometimes our job does fall in that responsive domain. We do have a district-wide threat assessment procedures. Our behavior specialists, school psychologists, social workers, and counselors are all facilitators of that process. But we do follow a specific protocol when students threaten to hurt themselves or another, or there's a perceived threat to hurt themselves or another. Community support agencies, we do partner with a lot of agencies that provide supports. We have the communities and schools, we have Coastal Horizons, and they are able to work with our students and our families in order to help work on that family structure. And then as an extension of Ms. Dixon's cybersecurity initiative, there are digital restrictions and restorative instruction practices that happen through that. Did you have a question? Yes, sir.
The gaggle monitoring system, most of that's done by the detective looking at that?
No.
So, I think it, but we'll see. So Gaggle is a platform that there are certain criteria that flags the communication, and that there, because of the 3 different levels, there is a person that works for Gaggle that would then monitor to determine if it's something that we need to have an immediate response, if we need to do a threat assessment, or if we need to involve law enforcement. So it actually happens through an employee of Gaggle, and that's through our partnership. And then it gets turned over to the school level to determine the next step, whether we're doing threat assessments or if law enforcement is contacted. So it's a partnership between the two in terms of school system and the Gaggle representatives.
So, okay. And
Yes,
then,
and the level of degrees determines who's contacted and when, so there's violations, questionable content, or possible situations.
so if, for example, if they pick up on a bullying incident, who do they contact next?
So schools have identified 4 individuals, so it's school admin usually and possibly the school counselor, depending on the staff, 3 or 4, yeah. And that those are contacted first, depending on the level of degree. They're either emailed or telephoned if it's a possible threat situation. And then from there, they run interventions as necessary on the specific incident.
Okay.
So this goes together with safety issues as well. Like if something's targeted on social media, I'm gonna do such and such.
So it doesn't search social media. What it searches is our Drive accounts.
Okay.
IM, Google IM that occurs within the district, and the student email accounts. We are testing an item that also does their Google searches on if they're in their devices. So on our devices, because we can only, our outreach only goes so far into
So
their
we're
personal lives.
inside right now.
Yeah, but that would do their searches. So if they search for, how can I hurt myself or something like that, it would also trigger the same response. It feeds into the Gaggle system and goes through the same chain of response.
Mr. Allen, did you get your question? Thank you, Ms. Dixon. We do have reporting protocols. Again, this falls under our policy. The board encourages students and parents or guardians of students who have been the victim or have witnessed bullying or harassing behavior in violation of our policy to immediately report such incidents to a teacher, counselor, coach, assistant principal, or the principal. If it's not brought to our attention, we're not able to respond. The sooner it's brought to our attention, the faster we can respond and hopefully a more effective outcome. We do have a reporting spreadsheet or form that each school has their own, so it's on all 20 schools have their own bullying incident reporting form. So I just did a little bit of a screenshot to see what it looks a little different for each school, but if you go on there, it should be easily visible to students and community stakeholders so that they can complete the form. And this is just a sample of what they would be asked to provide is the name and contact information, the relationship of to the reporter, the date of the incident, anyone that they know that is involved in the incident. We asked them to indicate whether the person was bullied, was the perpetrator, or was a witness. Everybody that is part of a bullying scenario has a different role and also has a different need in terms of counseling supports and student supports. We want to know if the victim was threatened, and then if the above question is yes, we do want to have specifics. So we're going to take these and investigate, regardless of how much information is provided, but the more that we have, the quicker we're able to have a resolution. To kind of see how this plays out, when somebody submits the Google form that's on the school website, each school has determined who receives those immediate notifications. Most often it is the school administrators, the principal, assistant principal, and often it is also a school counselor. So the administrator is the one that's going to receive the report and does some of the investigation, and they handle discipline. So the discipline part does not happen with the support staff. That happens through the administrator based on our code of conduct. But we do involve our school counselor and other support staff because they could be part of the investigation and definitely the follow-up. In a scenario, you're going to have the bully, and the witness. So the bully, we want to make sure that their support in terms of emotional needs, their safety needs, do they feel safe being in their classrooms, whatever the report states, we want to make sure we have provided support to that specific child or children so that they can return to the educational environment. The bully also needs some support. So there may be a consequence for the behavior based on code of conduct, but we also want to prevent this from happening before. And you know, sometimes people are bullied because they were bullied, so we want to stop that cycle. So we have to investigate not just what happened in this one scenario, but were there additional factors. And then there's the witness. So if you've ever witnessed an emotional event or somebody being in a fight or somebody screaming at each other, even as the outside person, that can take a toll on you. So we also want to do some debriefing with the people who have witnessed the event. All right, so consequences, again, policy 4329, I can't say that number today. So they are outlined, specific to cyberbullying is also like the second paragraph. And we want to be sure that when we have bullying and cyberbullying, those are considered reportable offenses in North Carolina. So reportable in terms of we put it in our Power School database, and that's something that we have to monitor statewide. Just some data that we pulled. So this is from the 2019-2020 school year. By elementary school, middle school, high school, the reporting form is the form I just went over with you. And then other means would be phone calls, face-to-face reporting, an email where a parent said this is what happened or a student said I was bullied. So for last school year.
Middle school kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, middle school, we love them. They're an emotional group.
That's the way to do it.
Yes, so this does tend to spike a bit in middle school. They have a lot going on at that age, and they're also learning to regulate their own behaviors. By high school, they are those young adults, and so hopefully they have that skill set.
You still work on JCPC with this exact item, right? So, and when I went last year, the majority of our cases were females in middle school, and I think the majority of those cases were social media related, correct?
So I don't have the current data, but yes, that has been a trend for our young people to hide behind that screen. It's much easier to bully. I don't have specific data on it, but trends also show that females tend to do the social isolation more than males. They'll kind of get out there and roughhouse and work it out and move on. Not that the way they're working out is the most effective or that I agree with it, but they kind of deal with it and move on. Whereas sometimes females tend to socially isolate a little bit more in terms of peer groups. Not that that happens in every case, so I don't want to make a blanket statement, but that has been trends of the past. And then this is for this school year. Definitely our numbers are lower. There could be cases that we haven't been told about, and also just the limited interactions that they're having right now. I think that would account for some of the lower numbers. And then we do provide resources on our website. It comes from the stopbullying.gov, so we try to provide those for parents and students so that they're familiar with what each type of bullying is and how to prevent it and how to respond. And that is all I have. So, oops, sorry. So any questions? I know that was a lot that I just threw at you.
Is it fair to say social media is a big, I know the board has received several emails this week about social media type stuff. It's fair to say that that is a large portion of how we're getting a lot of this stuff. Snapchat.
I do think, yes, social media plays a huge role in it. And I hate to say this, but at the same time, we have to look at how adults behave sometimes too, and we very easily hide behind our screens. And our kids don't necessarily have the skill set yet to stop and read through it before you respond out of emotion. I know there's plenty of times I want to respond out of emotion, but I have to stop and put my adult hat on for a minute. Students don't have that quite yet, so I do think a lot comes out of the social media because they're still learning to regulate, and they haven't learned that skill set, which comes with our prevention. But yes, I would say that that's a big piece because it's much easier to send a text and let you know what I'm thinking and whatever, and then
And then we bump into each other in the hallway next week, and
it just escalates.
And there's escalation. Is there So how far, what's the next step in trying to prevent this social media? We don't really have a next step because if it occurs there, it's...
So that's a tough one because a lot of it occurs outside of school. So
Right.
if it's brought to the school, we do, sometimes it will fall under our code of conduct, and definitely if it's something that's impacting one of our school properties. So if you think of students that maybe live in the same neighborhood and they're having a situation, well, they're going to impact the safety of that bus stop. So there are ways that it can connect back, but it doesn't always connect back to the school. So that is, I would say, a challenge for us because we want to assist and we want to support all three of the roles in a bullying situation, but sometimes our authority is not always there.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
No,
Yes.
it's difficult because parents contact us, this is happening, oh, I know it's school related, but a lot of times the things just happen outside of our realm of reach here, and it's not, and I think that's difficult.
And we start to look at that point is in terms of how much, if you remember number 6 on that list, was it's impacting the classroom, is it disruptive? And so when it becomes disruptive to our educational environment, that's us, that's what we're going to do.
If they bring it back to school, it's ours.
Yes. So I'd love to wave the magic wand and make everybody get along, but I haven't found that yet. Anything else?
Yeah, I look forward to working with you in the future. Maybe take some of these steps one step further and feel what we can do to make some positive improvements, changes.
All right, we definitely like any help we can get. So. Come on. Thank you guys for your time today.
All right, so I think we're gonna take a 5-minute break here real quick before our next topic. We're all falling out here, so we'll reconvene at, what time are we gonna look at here? Let's do it 8 minutes, let's do right at 4:30. All right, we're gonna go ahead and reconvene and start with Ms. White is gonna talk about our check-in scores.
Thank you for having, this is basically going to be done as an add-on from when I shared our check-in number 1 data in, I believe it was December, and we've added now to check-in 2. The 3rd check-in window starts next month, and then we obviously will have our EOGs after that. So, just a few reminders about the purpose of the check-ins is they are interim assessments for us. They provide teachers, students, and parents immediate in-depth action data based on particular standards. They share an item bank with EOGs and EOCs, which obviously helps us have the students exposed to those type of questions. Participation is voluntary by an LEA. We choose to participate in the check-ins as part of our MTSS core assessment. And basically, the way I always describe it is this is how we take the temperature 3 times a year in, to know where our kids are, what standards that they are developing on. The testing for this year was in 3rd through 8th grade reading, and I'm going to share it again in just a minute. This is the first year for 3rd grade reading, and then 3rd through 8th grade math, the 5th and 8th grade science standards, as well as Math 1, but that was not given this time. It only has 2 check-ins, and we haven't had the second window yet. The check-in window lasts for about 2 months, so whenever we schedule it, we have a review period that's at the end, and that lets teachers have access to the students' assessments, electronic copies to look at, to work with the kids on, and if they are able to share information with parents at conferences, but they cannot have copies of items. Again, it is a formative tool. It is not recommended to compare district level results to state level results or schools or classes. It is the focus is basically, like I said, to take our temperature at these 3 different times during the year. So, what we did from check-in 1 is just added the bottom 2 rows. So you can see, or the bottom 2 rows. So in check-in 1 and 2 for 3rd grade, you can see again, we did not have 3rd grade reading assessment for the 1920 school year. One thing to note, about the 3rd through 8th grade reading is the passages do increase in text complexity. So we assess the same standards, but the passages become more challenging. So that's why we'll see different strengths and weaknesses. So for example, here with the text complexity in 3rd grade, our students did not do as well. But when you look at the text complexity in 8th grade and the increase from check-in 1 to check-in 2 for this school year, we did see an increase, which is encouraging for us. We really are, excuse me, 5th grade, you see that growth that occurred where we had 64% of our students that were 60% and above, and now it's 73%. That second number is showing the average test score. So from our first check-in in 5th grade, for example, it was 66% was the average score, and this time it was a 69%.
We're doing way better than the state average here on movement, though. I mean, we're not seeing as much loss because we've been back in school longer than the rest of the state. We're seeing a dramatically smaller reduction in ours.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the things that I have conversations with Ms. Damon about what we're seeing in our early literacy grades is some of the work we do physically hands-on with learning to read is what we've lost this year with COVID. So we're monitoring that data as well as we use in class for those assessments and monitoring what changes need to occur there. But overall, I think specifically the 5th grade here was a good representation of what our kids were able to do by being in school for that time. And then next, we've got 6th through 8th grade. This is the this has been assessed in both years, all 3 assessments. So again, when we look at the changes in text complexity, in 6th grade there was an improvement. So we had 46% of the kids who were able to achieve a 60% or above, moved to 59%. In 7th grade, 43 to 59, and in 8th grade from 38 to 49%. So those are all trends that we obviously like to see. We don't love the actual numbers. We want those to be closer to 80% is our goal. As I said, we use this for our MTSS, our Tier 1, our core, to evaluate our core. But we were encouraged to see that move up in reading as well. I've also added action steps, at the previous ones. You can see just some examples. We asked each school to set a goal by each grade span and subject area, and so I just put in a few examples of things. So one particular school will be looking at some of the vocabulary work they're doing, what exposure they've done to nonfiction text. They get in their teacher reports a lot of detailed information, so it really lets them know what they need to work on moving forward. One of the things that I alluded to previously that I'm very excited about in middle school was our opportunity, and this was done using the COVID funds to offer either a Saturday school or an after-school instruction at all of our middle schools. And I don't know, I've asked Mr. Hayes to be here with us today about that. If there's anything that you would like to say, but the student participation has been strong across most of our middle schools.
Yeah, it has. It started strong. It has kind of weaned off just a little bit with the warmer weather, week, longer days. But we've had a really good, we've had a positive experience with the Saturday school. A lot of kids have shown up and they've started to improve their grades. You can see grades increasing just by getting extra help on Saturdays. It's about a 3-hour window of opportunity for us to make sure they're getting their assignments turned in. And we know if they're turning their assignments in, it may be compliance, yes, but they're seeing the material and they're getting the materials to better prepare them for items such as this. So,
are you seeing the students that have been difficult to log on, show up and utilize that at all? Or?
Absolutely. We have seen a major change in attitude for those students that have been attending in person. We have remote kids who don't come to school Monday through Friday, but they come on Saturday, and we've seen a huge difference in them.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So we were really excited to offer this opportunity and then to have the turnout. So a big shout out to the teachers that are serving kids in these programs, either after school or on Saturday mornings, as well as the administrators who were giving that extra time as well. So we're very excited about the outcome of that and then basically the minutes of instruction that we got back by doing this. So math. Math is a little more apples to oranges with check-in 1 and check-in 2 because they're completely different standards. So when we look at the standards for this time, you can see that our third graders perform better in these standards as well from check-in 1 as well as the fourth graders. And the fifth graders pretty much maintained where they are, a little bit of dip in the number of kids proficient. But we also saw those that strong movement with those fifth graders in reading. So that kind of tells you as the year goes on, the fifth grade math complexity does increase. It's moving towards middle school as it should.
So the virtual kids also do the check-in, right?
Yes, yes.
So have you done any comparison of virtual scores and face-to-face?
I haven't done any, I don't know if you guys have done any, Justin, with your breakout.
Not specifically, no.
Yeah, at schools. And we know, students that are taking these, they can take these assessments at home as well. We're kind of on the honor system with that. So we've got better participation. So obviously our elementary participation was, we were 90% and up of kids who took the assessment, and we were basically, I think, 85 and up for taking it in middle school. Those kids that are home, we can't force them to do anything with that. So we really tried to explain that we needed this information to help know where to go with them next. And then this is middle school math. Unfortunately, not as many changes here. I'm very hopeful with the addition of summer school and some of the focus that they've put on, Saturday school and after school tutoring that they have put on math, that maybe we'll reap some of those benefits with the third check-ins. But did not see the kind of changes we saw everywhere else with it either. This also, I think all of this data kind of speaks to our priorities for summer school, and we are, just an update on that, we're waiting for the legislation to see what's going to happen with requirements. We are prepared to go, and we kind of have the planning has been done behind the scenes, but obviously until we know more about the requirements of it, we don't want to start seeking out families because they need to be, people might be able to travel this summer and do some things, and we want to give them solid dates of when we'll be offering our summer school. But we will offer something, we're just not sure what the requirements will be from that legislation. This is science. So in the 8th grade, so the 5th grade, from check-in 1 to check-in 2, there was a slight decline. It was still within that 10% from year to year, although it was much tighter with the first one. And then we saw as well a nice increase from the first one to the second one for the 8th grade as well, from 50% of the students being above 60% and 63% on this assessment. So that is that.
So the key in the summer school is getting them there.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's a large number of middle schoolers who need to be there.
Yes. And we're going to do a roll-up. So the current 5th graders will come to their middle school. We want to help get that middle school frame of mind. The 8th graders will go to the high school so they can get in that high school frame of mind and really start that kind of aggressive push forward into next year. So obviously,
you anticipate the summer school being how long, 4 weeks?
So it's basically, it's 150, right now the legislation, the last draft showed 150 hours, which we would have to do basically at about 6 weeks.
That's long.
It is long, it is long. Ms. Damon, what was Jumpstart last year was 4 weeks?
That was 4 weeks.
4 weeks, and that was Monday through Thursday. This would be 6 weeks, 5 days a week.
They allow you 150 hours, or you have to attempt 150?
If the current legislation passes. So we are unsure of that. It is.
Is it looking like it will?
We're not getting any information right now.
No information?
No, it's gone, it was very loud and it's gone very silent.
Excessive amount.
Do we have the ability to doctor it based on our needs in our district, or is that part of this legislation that's going to?
I think the legislation, I think that's part of the conversation is, will they give districts more flexibility with scheduling? This puts our teachers with just 2 weeks to get out and 1 week before teacher return.
Intensify.
Right.
To get them there.
Oh, go ahead.
But we kind of have all the behind the scenes plans ready to go, and we're having those conversations. So when we know more, we'll be able to move quickly. We're not waiting.
There's no amnesty for retentions and things like that, or easing of the restrictions was not done this year. So we will be operating under our previous retention policy.
So yeah,
The principals will be making that based off of.
Right, and then we have the Read to Achieve law as well that dictates certain things for third grade. The only thing that was in that summer school legislation that, if it passes or when it passes or whatever happens, is it did talk about any kindergartner that participates in that opportunity could not be retained, which is where we see the majority of our retention as well as in kindergarten. A lot of times it's maturity, birthdays, those kinds of things.
I just worry because we have a lot of students not participating virtually. They're opting to go virtually, and then they're just not completing assignments. And the carrot can be for, we're going to retain you, because we should weigh in my opinion here, whether you participate in summer school in your retention. If you're subject to being retained, I think we probably should retain that child if they choose not to go to summer school, because there's no. That's the carrot.
So currently, it's addressed through the at-risk plans and the at-risk letters. So for example, Mr. Ruth shared with us, I think today, the at-risk letter that we'll use in middle school for the end of third quarter that goes home and with report cards and says, you are at risk of retention. We are hoping with this opportunity that you've afforded to our kids today is that we're going to have a strong push here till the end. And hopefully, like we said, get our students kind of back into the rigor that's required of just being physically in school. So, hoping, obviously that all that impacts all these situations.
We're going to be doing more than letters, so we'll be using our attendance people to follow up and people to.
So that's been occurring all year.
Yeah.
Continue. That's been occurring all year. Any other questions?
Thank you, Ms. Mullen.
Okay. So if you go back to the agenda, we have a change in people.
Yes.
Dr. Bennett is unfortunately under the weather. She is our lead for AIG as well as our middle school language arts instructional coach. And so on her behalf, we've got Brittany Metz. She is our middle school social studies instructional coach. And I just want to publicly thank this team of 4 who put this opportunity together for our kids. It was a special project that they really saw a need for, and she's going to talk to you a little bit more about that.
So, good afternoon, I'm Brittany Metz. I am a part of a wonderful team of curriculum coaches for middle school, and I'm going to tell you about our BCS AIG STEAM Wednesdays, which has been very exciting. We created this idea with the goal of having rigorous, challenging, and hands-on STEAM, which is science, technology, engineering, arts, and math, related learning experiences focused on critical thinking and problem solving for our gifted middle school students in Brunswick County. We decided on this focus because we saw a need and an opportunity for extension for our AIG students, and we also saw an opportunity to model instruction as our role as instructional coaches, so teachers could come in and watch what was happening on Wednesdays as well. And so the basis of the STEAM Wednesdays is it's completely virtual currently. It's aligned to content standards in all of our content areas, including art standards. It's completely optional. It's not graded. There's no impact on grades whatsoever. It's offered at no additional cost for students and families. If there's anything that they're required to use beyond basic household items, we are providing those for them. And all of the lessons are developed by my team, the middle school instructional coaches. Currently, our plan was for 10 synchronous learning experiences. On the left, you see the dates. So there's 5 actual project-based experiences, and each of them are 2 weeks long. And they're conducted in 2-hour sessions. So we have a morning session with a certain group of schools and an afternoon session with another group of schools, just based on what their Wednesday schedules look like. And it's an opportunity for them to collaborate not just across grade level, but across middle schools. So a lot of our teams might have Shallotte Middle and Town Creek Middle School students working together virtually to solve a problem. It's based on critical thinking and problem solving. Again, it's cross-curricular and also integrates technology. It's rigorous, challenging, relevant, and is based on student choice. When we thought of the idea, of course we contacted Molly and said, here's our idea. We presented it to our central service directors, I'm so sorry, and then we got to work. So we put out program information through the 6 schools, through AIG Leads. We created a parent flyer, a student interest survey, and a session registration. And so we had a total of 66 students submit an interest in the survey, and 56 of them signed up for at least one of the STEAM experiences. And so we started our first one on March the 3rd. And the first one was purposeful design. We had a total of 23 students for that particular session, 12 for our morning session and 11 in the afternoon. And then our next session that we're currently in, tomorrow is the second half of that. We have 21 students registered, 10 in the morning and 11 in the evening. Students that participate all get a certificate for every single experience they're a part of. And then they also get the badges that you see in the corner. So those can go like on their emails. They can put it in their email signatures and to just show that they've been a part of it. And then we also give a separate certificate and badge for those that might win the challenges for the week. For example, we had 2 for our first week. We had the most efficient, because we designed coolers, and then we also had a vote like the most creative, so the students voted on that. So we had some ties for the most creative, as you can see, but students were rewarded it, and then we sent out to all of the schools a list of all the students that participated, and those certificates and accolades are also on the Advanced Studies webpage. After our first session, we had students conduct a feedback survey, so after the second week on March 10th. And these are some of the responses. So the first question was, the best part of my STEAM Wednesday learning experience was. Students said they liked being with other like-minded people, getting to interact with students from other schools, that my experiment almost worked, getting to build a cooler from things found around our house, and building and testing their own design. One thing that they thought would make their experience better, as you can see, most of them say nothing, this was perfect. One asked for us to make the challenges harder, which is fine. I mean, we have 6th through 8th grade students, so we are definitely looking at that feedback as well. And with this one, I just wish we had gotten to meet people, our partners in person. So 3 words to describe our STEAM experiences: fun shows up a lot, creative, challenging, engaging, makes me think, interactive. And then additional feedback, just thank you for making STEAM fun. It was so fun to be with other AIG students. And then on the bottom, those are responses from parents. So we had parents send us separate emails. One just said, thank you for doing STEAM. My child is really enjoying it. It's the first time this year she's been excited about something. And the other just said, thank you for sending the certificate and badge. She was so excited about the last 2 STEAM sessions and is looking forward to the next session. And both of those students returned to our second session. And so our next steps. We plan to transition AIG STEAM Wednesdays to BCS AIG STEAM Live, which means we would find a way to incorporate this during the designated extension and remediation period that all of our middle schools have. Currently, three of our schools have aligned intervention periods. 2 are also aligned, and then Waccamaw is on its own. So our thought was to use 2 to 3 days a week, depending on the site needs, and do it on a 3-week rotation. So the first, like the set of 3, we might do the first week, the set of 2 the next week, and then Waccamaw the 3rd week. And those would be synchronous and asynchronous sessions that would have recorded modules. And then also, we as instructional coaches would be going across the sites for the STEAM line sessions. And another option that we have for that is just to create weekly modules that follows, Burke County has a STEAM Academy model that they currently do, and so that's another option that we have going forth. Any questions?
Have you thought about carrying this over into the summer school, because these kids lost ground also? And if we have summer school funding, it seems like something like this would be appropriate.
So with the legislative required summer school, that we'll have to prioritize at-risk students first. So we'll have to look at having a separate opportunity for enrichment activities as well.
Well, at-risk is, if they didn't perform like they did before.
As identified in the legislation, risk, which is not on grade level.
So is this the first year you've done this?
Yes, we just started it. The idea happened earlier this semester, and we started to work really fast. We saw an opportunity. It's been a conversation we've had over the last year anyway, and then Dr. Bennett was in an AIG lead state conference, and someone had a similar idea, so we just took it and ran with it.
I think it's great.
I think it'd be cool for all kids to have it as like an extracurricular math, like what do they call that, the mental elective, what do they call it, triathlon, what do they call that with the mental, there's a name for it, what is it, where they drop the egg off the ladder or the roof?
Odyssey of the Mind.
Yeah, there you go. It'd be great to have that in all of our schools, because I know a lot of kids would really benefit of the hands-on.
Well, we've been needing STEAM to come to this system, so thank you so much for.
And selfishly, the A is there for social studies and English language arts. But yeah.
This gives the practical knowledge, like we talked about with Daryl at the coast. You know, with he has students that come in there and have struggle with math at their grade level, and then next thing you know, they're in Dr. Richardson's class, building green energy modules and doing all kinds of stuff because they learned the practical knowledge. So I appreciate your guys' efforts in doing that.
Because you make learning fun.
Yeah, you make it fun. Yeah.
But to Mr. Lemon's comment, though, if it can be done with the academically gifted students, somehow you can finagle that. That'd be great for the summer.
They're left out quite often.
Yeah. Because we just think they're going to be okay, and they need to be challenged.
And if I could have a motion for
Motion to adjourn.
Closed session.
Motion to go to closed session.
So moved.
We got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.